Jack
Well, it's
Spalding.
not on yet. Now it's on. Now repeat what you were just saying.
Hi, I'm Jack Spalding.
Matt, are we doing full names?
Well, that's my name. I mean, you can know my name.
Okay.
I've been saying it publicly for I've been a Twitch streamer for 4 years, and I've always said my full name, but that's actually not my full legal name, so it doesn't matter.
Do you want me to tell them it?
No.
It's another J name.
Anyway, we're talking about something else today, and that is Dungeons and Dragons and all the cool bullshit things that we can do in it.
There's a lot of bullshit. Oh, there's so much bullshit.
Oh, but there's so much good fuckery.
There's good fuckery and there's bad fuckery.
Okay, what's a good example of bad fuckery?
Well, I actually do have a list of topics.
Okay.
One of which is how Hexblade is bullshit.
Why?
Because it's too goddamn front-loaded, and it makes it way... Also, it's a class that has such heavy narrative implications, and I just feel like it attracts the wrong kinds of players.
You mean like power gamers?
I mean, like people who should probably write their own self-inserted book characters.
Oh.
Because a lot of people, I mean, well, the patron warlock thing is, it's a sacred trope. But you want to take one level in it. One level and be like, well, that means I'm going to get a legendary weapon, right? Or it's like, or that means I have this patron that's like, it's going to treat me like a level 20 warlock when I only have one level in it, right? It's like, no, you can fuck right on off back where you came from.
Okay, so if you're just getting one level in it, what should you get?
I think about half of that first level feature should either be at level 3 or should be in Pact of the Blade. I say level 3 specifically because like Battlesmith doesn't even get intellect for weapon use until level 3, but why does Hexblade get charisma?
Yeah,
at
level 1.
Along with, doubling proficiencies in armor. You get medium armor, you get shields. It's essentially a multi-class unto itself at first level.
It's a big deal. Yeah, I mean, Warlocks, a single level dip in Hexblade can be a huge deal. Massive damage bonus to any, Paladin or even some fighters. Maybe a Swashbuckler wants to do that. Could be pretty cool. So I did something really hilarious the other day. I did a little experiment to see what was the highest initiative score I could give myself with a level 20 character. And it was this multi-classed monster that was totally mad. The multi-attribute dependent kind of character where it was a level 8 barbarian, level 2 time cleric, level 3 swashbuckler, level 3
What the fuck is time cleric? That's one of the homebrew things that I'm vetting.
Yeah, and it gives you proficiency
it
gives you not proficiency. It gives you a wisdom. Your wisdom bonus goes to your initiative score.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm still vetting on D&D Beyond.
Anyway, I was just messing around, and I got an advantage to initiative plus 23.
Well, imagine. I mean, without that, you could go War Wizard.
Exactly. It was like level 2 War Wizard.
Gets yeah.
It was level 2 War Wizard, level 3 Swashbuckler, level 8 Zealot Barbarian. I just picked a subclass. It didn't matter which one. But there was also what else was it?
But what's the purpose of this?
It was just to mess around to see how high an initiative score I could get. Like if I could regularly roll a 37.
What are you going to do with all this initiative?
Always go first.
But what bonus does that give you?
The ability to escape in any scenario.
Does you at least pick a class feature in there that actually benefits from being higher? Like, is there an assassin? Is there any dip in assassin? Is there any dip in gloomstalker?
Well, the dip is into swashbuckler, and it's mostly a barbarian, right? So you're basically a level 8 barbarian with all this crazy ability to accent surge. You can do the channel divinity with the time cleric, which is to get a second action again. It's
not if you're raging.
No, well, yeah, you can't rage and do that, but you can't cast spells anyway.
So it's just
it was just a screwy thing.
For the sake of going first.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of spells that don't require concentration that you can cast and then rage afterwards. Like spiritual weapon, cool shit like that. It's a stupid thing. It's like, what if you needed to either escape entirely from every combat scenario with ever, having to worry about it.
Well, imagine
Like
you
roll
just start
initiative,
running
right?
at the very
And if you're a
beginning.
barbarian and you're not surprised or something.
But I imagine you can just kind of start running at the very beginning.
Well, right. Yeah, you go
regardless
first.
of where you go in initiative.
Sure. But if you go first, it's just,
How many combat interactions have you been in that if you started running at the very beginning, you wouldn't have gotten away?
Not very many. Not very many.
She's generally on the other foot there. If
Yep.
you have the ability to even get away.
It was just
that's
a
the
thought.
thing.
It was just a thought experiment. It's not a character I wanted to play. So I don't usually design characters based on characters I want to play. I only do that if I actually know I'm going to play the character. If I start to design a character I really want to play, I just get an itch and I'll build a one shot around being able to play this character. So like I'll do a lot of just mechanical experiments so I can just rip the character up at the end or like put him into an NPC role somewhere. Just for fun. I spend so much time on D&D Beyond just like what do I want to do next? Like
Because you are also thoroughly of the belief like you make your NPCs like they have class levels.
sometimes that's only for generally one shots because when you start to do that into a campaign it becomes a problem. Because then you get to have the DMPC problem, and then they're always going to have, basically the DM really is playing against the players, and that's not what you want. For a one shot, it's fun sometimes to be like, okay, let's see who actually can win. But for the most time, you want to give up that fun, like, you guys are kicking my ass. Oh, this sucks. Oh man, all my cool baddies have just been slaughtered. Fuck.
There's
y'all.
also just a lot of things that the monster step boss can do that like a player character doesn't have access to.
Absolutely. I mean, that.
There's even more, there's more shenaniganery in the monster blocks than there are in any of the abilities you can get as a character, unless you just make it yourself and then add it to your DMPC, and then it's just we're now playing,
What are some
we're now
good
playing,
examples of that?
fucking playground games where I scream, "No, I have a force field. You didn't hit me."
What are some good examples of that? Like with monsters.
Most oozes have the ability to subsume people, as in like they bring them into their body and do damage. Where I don't believe that's available as a player
Yeah,
in any
that's not
way,
something you can really do
unless you can turn into an ooze.
unless you transform something into a piece of armor and as a warforged ingest it.
Yeah, but that takes hours to do, and there's nothing I can think of that can do that. Because even like polymorph has to be beast, and then even true polymorph still has to be a living creature or quote unquote living. I think that you can. I can't remember if you can make them. I think you can't make them undead in constructs.
Shape
actually,
change?
as shape change can't be undead in constructs either.
There you go.
But I mean, it still has to be some sort of character resistance. But there's like that. I mean, there's the infamous, like magic immunity, like Rakshasas, Tarrasques. I don't know if Tarrasques have it anymore. I know in previous editions, kind of more than the Rakshasa is the best way. Any level 6 spell like doesn't affect it unless it wants it to. I mean, you can't do that as a player.
Using the Rakshasa in the one shot that we did was so fun.
It didn't even come up.
I mean, it did actually at the very beginning. I think Zelda used like a guiding bolt or something, and it just fizzled.
Oh, I don't remember that at all.
It was just the very first thing. You were setting the whole building on fire. You didn't care.
Yeah. That was
Okay, this guy right here, he gets to play in a one shot. He's our forever DM. He plays in a one shot a barbarian level 20 who wants to be on a mission to die. And we go to they're in the city hall. They're looking for a Rakshasa who's like in charge of the town, and he just starts setting the building on fire, trying to force them on one exit, and it worked.
Well, I was fast enough. I had a casket of whiskey,
No.
and I truly believe that if you should cause as much damage through mundane means before you resort to spellcasting.
Oh yeah,
Because I think spellcasting limits a lot of people's imagination.
it does.
A lot of people are like, "Well,
it really does.
There's not a lot of stuff we can do." I call bullshit on that.
Yeah, you were a barbarian who just burned down a whole city hall without using 1 ounce of magic.
Yeah, and then you can like, what was
Well,
it?
until you pulled out the arcane cannon.
Well, yeah, but I didn't use it to burn out. I used it to shoot a hole in the ceiling and then be like, "Oh no, the dragon burning down the hall! Look, there's fire coming out of the roof." But
It worked.
I don't know. There's just a lot of things that people don't think about, like because of magic, they think that it just limits creativity. Like what was it like the Magnificent Mansion thing I did? To
Yeah.
there's a wizard who casts Magnificent Mansion. Usually that's something you can't get around, or something that becomes like an insurmountable thing because they can decide who can open. If I remember, they can decide who enters or who can open the door. But the way it was described is the door swung inward, and so I took some rope, I tied it around the knob, and then I tied that as tight as a barbarian with 24 strength could to a tree and keep it taut. That bitch ass wizard is not opening that door. And so now they're stuck in their own Magnificent Mansion until they poof out at the end of the 8 hours.
Yeah.
And you can build all sorts of traps. You can dig holes like outside. It's just I don't know. I think you should strive for mundane chaos before you get into the extraordinary kind.
Yeah, you really should. And also cantrips. I mean, people do not get creative enough with cantrips. I wish that I saw more use of like control flames or something like that.
There's a lot. Well, I mean, because there's also a lot like 90% of the cantrips, like if they do anything other than damage, if there's some sort of environmental effect, it specifically states doesn't do enough to cause damage.
Some of them, yeah.
Because I just typed out all of y'all's spells for this new campaign. Typed out, and the number of times I wrote that on it's like shape water, mold earth. It's either bonfire or something. It specifically states is not hot enough, or does not move with enough force, or does not do enough to cause damage in any way.
Yeah.
If it doesn't specify that it does damage, so that is limiting like to a degree, but also I mean people. It's too many people think that they can big brain and like outthink the rules and stuff, especially with cantrips, because everyone so many people treat the game like you're playing fucking Skyrim with potions. Like, oh no, I can eat 12 blocks of cheese real quick. I don't have to use this one potion because I need to save it for something that's more dangerous. And then they get to the very end and they haven't used a single potion all game.
Right.
And then, I don't know. So people are just afraid to use their resources.
Yeah,
I wonder if that stems from like a trust issue with like your group and your DM. Like if like you've had a DM who's like sit there waiting for you to expend all your resources, and only then do you run into like the main problem. It's not like you would. They take out the natural. I don't know. It's just it strikes me as odd.
For me as a player, it's twofold. It's because we talk about a lot about how we don't normally follow a normal adventuring day where you're supposed to have 6 encounters that use resources whether they be combat or not.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if the very beginning of the day we, go to, let's say we're in Strixhaven and we go to some classes and then we go to the Fire Drill Cafe and we have a little battle there and I use one of my 2 spell slots for the, for the whole day and, God forbid I need, 2 of them later, or at least if I use 2 of them in that fight, if I have another fight that day, I know that I can't heal anybody, or I can't, do something. So I want to at least save 1, or I at least want to use my cantrips to the point where like, oh boy, okay, I need to actually take it up a notch because we're in trouble here.
Mm-hmm.
I try to be at least creative enough with cantrips to where I don't need spells for damage until we level up some. Like we're talking about level 1 play.
Yeah. Level 1 play is obviously different from that because spells are so limited. But I don't know. Always just, also just the number of times I've been asked, can I tell if this is a magical item? Can I tell what it is? Can I roll an arcane check? I'm like, sure, roll an arcane check. Yeah, you think it's magical.
You think it's probably magical.
Yeah. It's like,
there's a spell that does that.
I can't identify it. I'm like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Are you going to cast identify?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing right there.
That nonsense. If there's a spell for it, you cannot do it with a skill. That is how I view, unless it is a mundane thing.
No, or like you have like proficiency or like some sort of expertise in that. If you're like a wizard who constantly deals with magical items, or like maybe an artificer, you probably just look at like a cool ass sword and you're like, yeah, dude, this is for sure magic.
Well, I mean, that's actually what like an Arcana check is meant for. It's meant for Arcana stands as like the history of magic. So like if it's a legendary magical item, you'll know that's what it is, but you won't know what it does.
No, right.
I mean, it kind of falls.
You don't know that it does fire damage and that it has a cursed soul inside it, or whatever.
It kind of falls into the kind of the same thing that I do. I see a lot with insight. it's not like a truth detector.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. Like people are like, do I believe?
Let's talk about insight.
Well, okay. Yeah, no. With that, it's well, my favorite. It's one of my favorite things to do is just respond like, yeah, you think, like you think because what it's based on is this idea of is this person acting weird? But in order to do
How
that,
well do you know this person?
yeah, you kind of like
Are they acting how
like,
you know them to
like
act?
if you have like passing familiarity with it, you'll have probably a lot higher DC on early insight for anything. But as you get to know the person more and more and more, the DC will probably lower unless they're a known liar or they've just been playing a different role than who they are.
Okay.
But like that's one of the I don't know that's just something that always kind of irks me with insight, and I get why players like want to do that with it, but it's like after if you just have someone who's like after every single thing someone says, it's like, do I believe them? I'm like, well, cool. Well, they're an archfey, and you've never met them before, so you can roll. Yeah, you can roll. You can roll.
Yeah, exactly. This demon that wants to steal your soul. Yeah, he's definitely
never
telling
met
the
before.
truth.
You've never met.
Yeah,
before.
you've never seen this guy. Your insight's going to be a lot of help here because you definitely know what he's up to and what he's all about.
And you don't want to take away the player's options to like, gain some perspective and gain some insight into them. But it's just that line where it's not a truth detector. It's not a lie nor a truth detector. It's.
Are they acting on or off?
Yeah, Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be.
That's all it should be. Is whether are they acting how you know them to act or not. Or if you
That's
know
right.
that they're a liar and you think that they're probably lying, yeah,
That's
they're
why
acting like how
generally,
they actually lie.
and I still have them roll for it in all honesty, because otherwise it's also a major red flag that also gets onto like skill dog piling or like purposefully metagaming like off of what I say like in response to like. Generally, I still let people roll the very first time they meet someone and they try and go insight. But I'll be very honest, DC is usually like 30.
Wow.
But that's because, like, if you meet someone at a party and they tell you something like, "Hey," like if I met you at the party for the first time, you're like, "My name's Jack." If I turn to the voice in this guy, like, "Do I believe his name is Jack?" Do I believe his name is Jack? Well, how the fuck am I supposed to know otherwise? How the fuck are you ever supposed to figure out otherwise? Unless he's wearing a big shirt that says my name is explicitly not Jack.
Yeah.
I'm lying to you. No, you can set as 30 because but that also you can breaking 30. That's those kinds of people that are like if you you try and brought Jesus back or like the Dalai Lama. And you try and like lie to them on the first like go like also I feel like that insight also it not only is a personal like perspective on people, but it's also kind of like a force of personality almost like if you ever grew up Catholic, like just try lying to a nun you've never met. You get a little like you'll get sweaty palms, but like those are those people that could break those DC 30 checks.
Yeah.
That like because of one reason or another, but like if for very first interaction, like it'll probably be DC 30, but it'll go down as they interact with them over time. Because I also view like I don't know, it just kill as much as like players want to succeed and how much fun that they have being like, oh like I'm perfect for this, exactly what I do. It's like cool, we all agreed to do this like murder mystery. Like little like short adventure for 4 or 5 sessions, but you built your character to perfectly counter everything that I mentioned that we all agreed on that we were looking to do. Like you built it to perfectly counter all of that, knowing it would perfectly counter all that. So we're done with about 6 weeks of playing in about 45 minutes. I hope you all have other things to do. For
you
6
figured
weeks.
out the murder mystery. Congratulations.
But yeah, it's like you kind of want that, but it's kind of like players being their own worst enemies.
Yeah.
They really are. They not calling players children, but I don't think they realize
You're playing a game.
Yeah, you don't really want the game to end.
No. You're not supposed to win.
Yeah.
There's no winning.
No, there's winning eventually, but you want to.
You can win each story, but if the story ends because you won it so fast, then that's not fun.
Yeah, and generally the players are their worst enemies.
So what do you think about people rolling for the same check, like multiple people rolling for the same check? Like if everybody's
well,
trying
I know for our table I either have like if there's ever like a big thing, it's like looking around a room when everyone's in, it's either 2 of y'all or one person with advantage with one person helping. Because the biggest thing is like that skill dog piling is like unless you can give me a very good reason why you looking around is so just at its core different. Either the circumstances are different, or there's simply something that you know that the other person doesn't know, like in game. Why would it be any different? You looking around this room like that versus person right here looking around this room like that. You don't get a roll again in Dogpilot unless there's a change in circumstance or there's some other outside factor.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Because also it's kind of a representation of like you're there too. I mean, what like their very high roll on like perception is also could be indicative of you seeing something and pointing it out to them or drawing it their attention, because if it's like a full group thing, because that whole idea of like, well, we're just gonna keep rolling until we make, it's like, well, then why the fuck are you even doing the check?
Yeah,
because you're gonna make it eventually.
There are certain times where I'm like, this is a skill check that everybody would try to do at the same time, and so I'm just gonna make you guys roll to see how long it takes, and or not roll at all because you're gonna get it. It's not hard.
And that does play out as something like they're and a lot with kind of branching into what we were talking about earlier with the whole idea of hesitancy to like use resources.
Yeah.
And then how like there's not always like a full adventuring day that people a lot of people try and short rest after every fight, or take an 8-hour cat nap in the middle of a dragon's lair. That's my favorite, actually.
I think when we did that the first time I was playing in your campaign, and we did a long rest in the dungeon, and
was it Brazen Throne?
Yes. Yeah, and we had
and the Oni were fucking with them. They
Oni
kept changing, and like they're turning
night.
into like children and knocking on the door, being like, "Can you help us? We're hungry. We need food."
It was horrible. Oh, the things that happened that night. We fought them so many times.
Well, and they're not. Yeah, because they're not gonna just let you sleep.
Well, then I ended up
either that, or I could have just been real mean
awesome.
And just waited for the first. Like they could have just waited, all of them invisible, and just waited for the first person to come out the door. Then it's 8-9 surprise, 8-9 attacks from invisible ogres. And they're dead instantly, just splattered dead. They're gonna keep beating the body until all the death saves are gone. So yeah, that's the big issue. It's like, but then that comes the question is, well, why didn't they do that? Why did they just kill all of y'all right then and there when you decided to try and sleep a full night in the dungeon? And it was, well, for story reasons. They were busy doing other things. That and just the situation with this place was weird. It was Groundhog Day during the day, and at night it went back to the like in-world iteration, which was like a few hundred years later. But during the day, it was replaying one day over and over. That was a few hundred years past.
Yeah.
And so it was a weird illusion and enchantment kind of like shindig, which they weren't super comfortable with either.
Okay, so because the enemies were just as unfamiliar.
Well, they were familiar, but they were also they weren't trying to test the boundaries of it because that like illusion / enchantment like kicked on when dawn rose, and you can still die in it.
Oh yeah.
And so
we found
the
that
big issue is
quick.
And they had a role every day to play.
Oh yeah.
Like they had a role to set up. They were some of the original things that helps or standing in for some of the original things that helped set up the horrible tragedy that happened right about dinner time. And it's a whole day leading on to it's all the preparations to make sure it goes off without a hitch. And so they had to make sure they were still in the right place at the right time for that.
Yeah. Okay. Man, that was such a fun dungeon. But what else is on your list?
There's the mechanical optimization versus narrative optimization. I think I think we kind of touched on that with the warlock thing. My little spiel about that, because there's so many times people. Actually, I see it a lot more with clerics. People are like, well, can't my god just do this, solve this problem for us? Can't I just pray to him and he can solve the problem for us? Look, bitch, you get that at level 10 and then you still have to roll.
Yeah.
Right? You don't just get to wish away or pray away your problems.
I mean, come on. What fun is that anyway?
Well, it's like, well, why would they do that for you? Why would they take the time when you've been a shit priest? Let's be serious. You've been a shit priest for like a year and a half now.
Yeah,
you haven't done anything in the name of this god.
Yeah. Or
you jumped gods a few times actually, then finally came back.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious in that whole sense.
Okay, wait a second. What do we deal with? What do we do about clerics who are constantly switching gods?
Uh, well, you don't. Well, they're at least staying with the class. They're staying with the class, and I mean, there was the domain change in my campaign, but that served a narrative purpose. That served a narrative purpose, and it was something I wanted to try myself
Mm-hmm.
because one of the players started with the Tempest domain, and they thought that they were going to be playing Thor,
Right.
which is not what the Tempest domain is.
No.
It's actually a really lackluster lightning because the only two lightning damage spells that even that domain has are called lightning and thunderstep.
Not very good.
You have to get like lightning bolt from some other source or other things like that from other sources. You don't. Those are the only two things you can even use.
Yeah.
And they realized that too late. They realized that too late, and so they ended up dying. And so I was like, "What do you want to try out Death Domain for a little bit?" And that also played into a greater narrative purpose I had, where the Death God and Talos for this thing is Talos and Merkel have issues with each other,
Yeah.
and Merkel is playing the long game, and so just was actually pretty fully okay for it with a disillusioned Talos worshiper coming. He's like, yeah, come over here. Let's. You probably have some things that I could fit, like I could learn from you, or like you can probably get into places I couldn't.
Right.
Like eventually.
Right.
But then they ended up dropping Merkel after they realized, oh, this is a god of death. He doesn't care about me. Like he is, and the way more Merkel is portrayed, like there's like the original, Jergal. Then he gave the Dead Three, Baneball, Merkel their powers over a Game of Bones because Jergal was bored as shit with ultimate power apparently.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there's a whole big thing with that. Then there's a Raven Queen. Then there's Kelemvor. Kelemvor, that sounds right. Might be saying it wrong, but they're more like how like Anubis and Osiris were for the Egyptians. Like they're more like we'll judge like your soul worthy at the end. Merkel, as I've always seen, is more like I'm just the death of all things. Like I am the weight of eternity and infinity. Like all things die, and will be in the black room with me, just sitting in darkness, just waiting for everything to die. He's not really like judging souls. He's like, I am just death.
Yeah.
Not the act of dying, not the process of passing on, just death.
Oof.
That's how Merkel has always like seemed to me, because that way I can still have like Kelemvor, and there's not the huge just with the homebrew setting. I actually enjoy that a lot more, rather than this whole idea that like Kelemvor usurped like Merkel,
Right.
and the Raven Queen also usurped one of them at some point. There's much back and forth, but I've never really liked this idea that there's not a god of just dead, like death anymore. Like Kelemvor's still there. He's still he's the judgment at like kind of at death, and he kind of like partitions like the souls out to where they're supposed to go.
Okay.
I've always just enjoyed I've also just always had a huge boner for necromancy stuff. Always.
You like the
Mine's
Necrons in
bad.
Warhammer?
I like them a lot more now. Their newer iteration, because now they have actual like they were like an Eldritch horror, like an unknowable, ununderstandable Eldritch horror. But that's what the Tyranids were.
Right.
They were just metal Tyranids. Essentially, They had no personality. They didn't speak. But they recently changed them to be kind of borderline kooky, but mostly like millions-year-old beings that are coming back. Also have a weird perception of time because of that.
Yeah.
Like hours or moments to them, or they can like focus in on microseconds
Mm-hmm.
because of just being machines like that. But they have like all their old like rivalries and just the rest of the world's going on around them. They're like, we don't care, or the rest of the universe is going on around them. It's like, I don't really care. I've seen empires just like it's like there have been cycles and cycles and cycles since we went to sleep.
Yeah.
They went to sleep like 84 million years prior to this, but the setting, and they're just now like some of them are starting to wake up,
Oh my god.
and like they're like planets that like we built that are dust now. It's like we literally, you are just an upstart. You were a you're not even a usurper.
Yeah.
You're like you pissed on my doormat outside, and then I fucking ran you off with a shotgun, and that is all you're going to do to my empire. But I just like that idea of like the infinite. Like I know I always loved like going to like Warcraft. I always like loved the Lich King.
Right.
I always really enjoyed like the Death Knight class, but more just from the sense of like it's like death isn't the end, and there's certain things that the living can't do. I've always really enjoyed that. I don't know.
Yeah, I like to build my characters definitely with a mechanical.
Oh, are you
idea in
changing the
mind.
subject now?
No, that was the subject we started on, and we got all the way
Oh, did
there.
we? Oh.
Yep.
It happens.
I like to build my characters around a mechanical reason. Always a function based, like how I want to play, and then I go from there. I build a backstory around the narrative, of course.
Oh, I need to tell you about this wild build I got just from playing Mountain Blade again,
Oh yeah.
and also because I am dead fucking set on conquering Calradia as the Battanians, even though they have trash everything but archers. I'm going to conquer the world with skirmish troops,
Oh yeah.
and I figured that going like a javelin throwing build. I mean, sadly, it'd have to be probably a Gloomstalker to be the most effective. But I was thinking Bugbear, Gloomstalker would be
So you get
very
the sneak attacks.
well. You get that, but just instance, I'd probably forego all armor and play just the full naked Celt. I was just gonna name him Woad.
Oh my god.
Because I mean, it plays that like being invisible and like that. You know what they used to do with like the Romans, like they would sneak up right on them and then like pop out of the bushes all painted like in black or dark blue paint. Like they didn't have armor because otherwise they know about it, so that was a trade-off. And it's like it's that idea of like capturing that mechanic. I was thinking Barbarian for a little bit, but Barbarian just isn't.
You don't want to be a thrower as a barbarian. You don't want to be.
Well, you can be a thrower perfectly fine. It's just. I was thinking about like a skirmisher and stuff like that. Like you can't do it with Barbarian, but I don't know. Ranger just plays so well to it because there's a lot of like battlefield control stuff you can do with like, playing a skirmisher or cultist.
I want to have spike growth. You know.
Well, not even just spike growth. Like
I want to be able to cast spells.
You know, you have a conversation with your DM, see if flame quiver or lightning arrow can apply to the things you throw, not just the ammunition coming out.
I think it should.
And it gives you interesting options once you start to get bored of just all right, I'm gonna pop out of the bushes, I'm gonna throw a bunch of javelins at them, and I'm gonna run away.
Yeah.
Whenever combat starts getting longer than 2-3 rounds, and Gloomstalker just fit that like that the naked fighter kind of like idea of they gave up armor so that they could be more agile and that they could be more sneaky. And I think I would still play to that. I would still play them naked.
Aren't they invisible in the dark at a certain level?
Okay, they're invisible if you rely on dark sight to see them.
Right.
Which we got into a conversation about. This is a useless fucking thing because outside of total darkness it's useless, because in dim light you don't use dark vision to see still. You're just at a disadvantage. You can still see them with normal sight. You only go against the disadvantage. You only cancel out the disadvantage.
I think you have to play rules as intended here. I mean, it's clearly meaning to say that if you're using dark vision to see them, like you would normally use dark vision in the darkness.
Well, have you read the lore behind Gloomstalker? And what the whole idea behind the subclass is? It's fighting things down in the Underdark where it is just darkness.
Yeah.
And things rely only on darkness. You're supposed to be sneakier than those things. Like you're supposed to have adapted to those things. But if you're saying, if I'm holding a torch, out in the hallway right there.
Yeah.
And you're now just outside that 20 feet of bright light, and you're now in that 20 feet of dim light, and I happen to have dark vision. Are you saying you were still invisible then?
I think no. No. That's I think a different scenario where you're in dim light created by light.
Or dim light in general.
Sure. If you're in dim light, there's light created.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're in it's if you're using dark vision to see them in darkness.
Yeah, but that's the thing. How often is the rest of the party going to be willing to follow you into complete darkness?
Almost never.
It's the assassin problem. It's the assassin subclass problem. The assassin subclass is not meant to play in a group.
No.
Or it's meant to play with a group that is willing to sit there for 2 hours and not do anything.
And let you play Vax.
Exactly. or just let you play Assassin's Creed by yourself.
Yeah, you want to play Assassin's Creed for an hour while the rest of us have a little dinner break? Sure.
Yeah, that's innately, and that's one thing. I really wish they would do something with the assassin. I kind of think that they should. This is gonna be, kind of a confrontational issue, but I don't think it should be rogue.
Mm.
I think it should be monk.
Oh.
Because then you can tie the assassinate stuff to key points.
Yeah.
Either that, or you have to introduce a whole new resource just to one subclass.
You know what? That actually makes a lot of sense because then you could do monk weapons for the assassin. Would be very specific, like whatever.
Or you can use like
weapons you want to use.
I mean, you could set a thing where you can do a set like there's the normal like turns for when assassinate would apply.
Mm-hmm.
Surprise they don't hear there. Or you can spend like key points like equal to your proficiency bonus to make it a critical strike.
Yeah, instead of
which still makes it 3 times in a long rest.
Yeah.
But you're draining all of those key points into that. So
yeah, and instead of like a sneak attack, you could do like something where they hit you in the right spot. Perfect critical shot.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. That's or just I don't know any of the other classes that already have a resource system tied to that you could just make it a hefty cost for an auto critical,
mm-hmm.
and then especially when you start to get like Death Strike later on. But I mean, or you could keep it rogue, but you would just have to introduce a new resource of some way so it doesn't become like, all right, we're gonna do 45 minutes of fucking shit kicking, so we can sit here and make sure that one of our players isn't useless because we have to set up this ambush, but we have to set up in a way that nobody will ever expect it's an ambush. So obviously we got to go 10 miles down the road to set up this ambush for these people that are walking, and we have to make sure that they're lulled into just complete safety. We have to kill everything along the road too to make sure nothing spooks them.
So I would want to play an assassin in like a super social campaign, like a high high inquisitive society kind of campaign where you're like using costumes and like.
Well, then that also. I mean that would depend upon your DM as well because the surprise, the surprise condition it has to state that like in order to be surprised you have to not expect like you have to not know that danger is present.
Right.
But if you go to like any high powered political meeting, I can't imagine those people aren't on edge even like in our world. Like they're probably on edge like, oh shit's gonna like it has to
if you're like a president and you go to a meeting with Secret Service there, the Secret Service are not gonna be surprised.
Yeah, but right. or you said like playing like an Inquisitor or something like that. It's like so you're probably gonna be hunting cultists or like or that setting's version of the witches who are going to have already been persecuted. I mean, look, it's like going back and it's like trying to surprise a Jew back in the day. All right?
They're ready.
Yeah.
They're ready.
Most of history is just sporadic stories of people shitting on them. You have to find them in a position where like, oh damn, people don't like us again.
They tried to kill us. They lost. Let's eat.
That's the thing. Like, that's why I have such an issue, and like I love the idea of it. I love being able to like make it worth, especially as a rogue, like because their big thing is like that one big like single burst attack.
Yeah.
So instead of like providing like reliable damage throughout the rounds, like they're like there's like some sort of spellcaster or there's some sort of battlefield controller or there's one thing causing an issue. I have to burst that down as fast as possible to give us the edge or take them out of the fight, rather than like, well, the fighter is going to kill it eventually.
Right.
Like the fighter will kill it eventually. There's no question about that. It's just what's it going to cost the rest of the group, and that's kind of what the rogues role. Like I've always seen with sneak attack, and that is like they're the sniper. They
totally
they shoot the guy on the heavy machine gun.
Yes.
But then the rest of the squad is still taking out everyone else.
Right. The rest of the squad is taking out the frontline guys while the mage in the back who's about to cast Wall of Fire gets sniped.
Mm-hmm.
When Mark played that Aarakocra, with the legacy Aarakocra with 50 feet of flying speed, he was taking out all my snipers on the roofs. Oh, it was so good.
Yeah, flying speed's always a big issue for people. I feel like it's very divisive, whether people think that you should have innate flying speed or not. I feel like a lot of those issues come down to not how dirty is your DM willing to play, but kind of like what their background is. Because like personally, I've been playing back when it was, just Warhammer Fantasy, and then now it's Age of Sigmar, and then 40K since I was 12.
Yeah.
And so I have a very heavy wargaming mentality when I come to it. It's like, so innate flying isn't that much of an issue for me, but that's just because I know, the people that y'all fight are gonna be like, well, they're flying. Everyone else kind of looking about it, like the rest of you, it's like, yeah, they're just kind of hitting stuff. But that dude flies. Start picking up stuff and throwing it at him. And but I feel like a lot of I see online and stuff. A lot of people complain. It's like, well, I don't know how to like design encounters without targeting. It's like,
You're
gonna
have bows,
or it's like, are they just stupid?
like, do you not have any spellcasters in the enemies you're fighting?
It's like,
how about like
if a helicopter is chasing you, are you gonna stay out in the middle of a field if you're not gonna try and shoot it down, or are you gonna get under cover where they have to come down anyways? Then there's a whole, there's a lot of other issues.
Why don't you have an enemy throw a net on them, for God's sake?
Nets have a very limited range, actually.
But I mean, like, while they're on the ground.
Oh yeah, true. But yeah, I don't know.
Hit them with hypnotic pattern.
I think innate flying's fine. It also just draws a lot of attention to them as well. It could be depending on the setting. It's like a low magic setting, and they can innately fly, like, and they're flying around in the village. People are gonna be like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
And maybe someone thinks that big bird feather wings are a good aphrodisiac or something.
Maybe.
Like, it's gonna make stuff weird.
Yeah, you're gonna get poached.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no real issue with that. Yeah,
my name
just
is John Feathers.
God, that was such a ridiculous fucking short adventure.
God, I loved that. I loved watching that. All right, what's next on the list here?
Oh yeah. Do you ever kind of get angry with the players or the DM for like beating your plans?
No, definitely not as the DM getting mad with the players. As the players, it can get frustrating sometimes because you will often plan your plans out in front of the DM, and like to have them foiled by someone who knows they're coming is kind of like, it's a little bit like, hey man, fuck you, like why would you do that?
It's not like a perfect counter.
Yeah, like,
but if it's like a general
I
counter,
expected this L the entire time, like.
Well, the one funny thing I do kind of have a little bit of kind of history with that is just like, if you piss off like an organization that you know is magical and that can and does have the ability to scribe on you, is like,
they heard your every
you
word.
should kind of expect at some point.
You guys didn't plan any of this.
Like, if you start getting closer to any of their operations, like geographically, like, they're probably gonna start watching you more and more, and then like you should expect that, but like, I would try and avoid being like, well, y'all just for a year, y'all never even checked to see if y'all were being scryed or not. Like, you have to give them like the clue, because scry actually does have a check to see if they notice.
Yeah.
That or they realize that they're being scribed on. I can't remember if you actually see the object scrying you, because it always forms like a little like thing. I can't remember if you actually see the object or if you just get that feeling, like you always like, no matter where I am on the street, when I'm walking, I always turn around and look at someone who's looking at me. I'll always make awkward eye contact with that.
Yeah.
I do it in every classroom I've ever been in as well. So I turn around to look at the clock, and I always meet like one person's eyes. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't mean to just stare right at you. I'm sorry.
Oh man. Okay.
But as a DM, how do you like feel about that?
Oh, when the players ruin my stuff, that's the whole game. That's what you're supposed to have. Is I'm creating these bad guys with these plans. They're not my plans. They're the world's plans, so to speak. It's like, the universe made this happen, not me. It's, if you guys foil this, if you guys mess it up, that's your guys' adventure.
Yeah.
And I hope you do. Like in the one shot we did where Arthur had crushed the ring of mind. What was it?
Shielding.
Mind shielding. Thank you. The ring of mind shielding, and Treasure had passed on. I never expected that you would true resurrect her. I never saw that coming. Like, that was something.
I did think about the mechanical implications of that. I'm not sure if that would have worked that way or not as well.
Definitely let it happen. Like that's another thing.
Taking your deed.
That's
and being
another
like,
thing.
Well, how
And
much is this deed worth?
Let's go straight into the.
Can I use this as a 50,000?
Well, it was 20. It was 25,000.
Yeah, it was 50,000
because there was 50,000 gold in there,
Yeah.
and so you basically used half of it
Yeah.
in that moment and the will got like basically consumed, and like that was the whole thing, is that the will was gone and the 25,000 gold was gone, and it took an hour, of course. That was the components, though.
It should have taken an hour.
It took an hour. We let that just
So all
pass
just
quickly.
stood, like everybody just stood there. I'm just intently staring.
There
at the
weren't
wheel.
any checks. I mean, it was just like
There were for narrative's sake, there were things that were pushed.
it was very late in the day, and I was surprised you guys were still wanting to play. I was like, okay. That's another thing, is we got to talk about how lenient we are with rules, and also like at the end of a session, how much are you trying to like keep it going versus like, do you want to wrap up?
Never
here?
speed up the pace. I never change the pace, because that's when you start to show your cards. That's when you start to ruin like. Because also if you don't speed up the pace, you just let them go with the pace that they're going, and you can find some good like cliffhanger or some good stopping point without having to like artificially push it, and instead of be like, oh yeah, like for the entire 3 hours prior they were going room to room, and you were getting in depth because they liked doing that, because they liked that. But then all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, we're kind of getting close to coming time. It's like, yeah, as y'all going through the rest of the dungeon, whereas the whole 3 hours before they were going room to room and every hallway's being shared. It's like, oh yeah, you make it through the rest of the dungeon, you get to this point. It's like
There's no reason to do that.
Yeah. There's so much that you miss, and also there's there's just the kind of like flashes of inspiration you could have like in between wherever that was and next week.
Yeah.
For little things throughout it, that would just make it that much better.
So for me, it's like if I'm in like a very short 3-session, 4-session campaign, or like a one shot, yeah, I'm gonna move things along, because I don't want the players to spend all that time searching every room because there's nothing in there. That's a waste of their time. There's not gonna be loot. Like,
what if they're just as happy as pigs in mud?
If they're as happy as pigs in shit, fighting every single bad guy, well, there's gonna be bad guys in every room. But that's a totally different thing than like searching every room for like loot and like traps and all that stuff.
Yeah.
If they're wasting a bunch of time talking to Boblin the Goblin at the very beginning of the tavern, and in my 3-hour one shot, I'm gonna say, and Boblin, he all of a sudden he starts foaming at the mouth, and every other patron of the tavern starts foaming at the mouth, and you guys need to roll con checks. Like,
but what if someone's just like, this is bullshit, I drank all the drinks that they drank.
If I have a story hook thrown into the players and nobody grabs it, well, then I'm going to make one real fast that you guys can't ignore.
No, you can't do that.
Well, because you guys aren't if they're not doing anything.
No, you need to just learn to do what I do. Just understand how to emotionally manipulate your players. You give them hooks that not only were their characters not like go for, but they themselves will go for. You don't ever have to push them. You just lay out things that there's no way that they would pass this up.
You were one of the people,
know that they'll come back.
You were one of the people who, in the one shot, you were like, well, I don't really know if my character would really help out with this, but Zelda was like, hell yeah, we're gonna do this, and like you're helping too. Like,
I was like, okay. I don't know. I don't fucking trust wizards. I have a big old thing about trusting wizards.
Wizards.
This one wizard just showed up exactly where I was. Like, I got thrown into this plane, knew I was gonna be there. I'm like, huh. That rings off a few warning bells.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Like, this doesn't seem right.
He was telling you the truth, though.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough.
Still.
That was the weirdest part about Arthur, is that he was always telling the truth. And it was just a weird truth that, like, he just knew you were going to be there and was ready for this, and that was the story that happened.
It doesn't make it any less weird.
It doesn't. Right? Well, that's the fun part.
Especially for someone who doesn't trust wizards because of what had just happened to him.
I had one day to come up with this. It was like the middle of the night. We were like, and Taylor was like, "Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be out for like a couple of months." I was like, "Okay, well, new thing that we just talked about." Yeah. Rules as written or rules as intended.
But wait, no, I want to go back to the subject we were on, because I know it's something I've repeated to you time and time again, but I do actually disagree with you on the like you create these things to be ruined. Like, is this whole idea, like, I do personally I actually get really fucking angry, like, internally, whenever, like, y'all do beat my bad guys and stuff, and y'all overcome the plans. Like, I make the plans, like, overcomable but it's because like there's a whole idea that and but I'm never like working against like explicitly working against you. I'm just doing what those bad guys or those groups would do.
Yeah.
Because at some level they have to be competent.
Right.
They have to it has to not be like a cabal of wizards. They're like, no, we're not gonna have anyone that can protect us physically.
There's no wards on this castle door.
Yeah, no, they're gonna be because and this is my thing is like if I don't believe in these bad guys, why would y'all?
Mm-hmm.
Especially since I know I'm your senses, so I do, but I don't. Like I know it's gonna happen. I know I'm gonna get angry about it. Like I already know going into it, I'm gonna burn down something that I have to convince myself is like cool, or that I not even have to convince myself that something that I think is cool, something I think it's like a competent bad guy, because otherwise they won't seem like a threat if they're just a joke, or if they are like a jokey bad guy, then they do also have to be terrifying.
Yeah.
Like with
Chegarak.
Yeah, with Chegarak and essentially being dressed as like a Harlequin mime, but he's an eldritch being that has just like been sowing chaos, and he's all weird and goofy just because he's purely there for his own entertainment. But he sent a village of cannibalized zombie halflings after y'all.
Yes.
Because he was just like y'all can't you came for a MacGuffin, and he's like, you know what, instead of fighting y'all, take it. Yeah. Take it. I'll see y'all later. And just kind of disappears, and then all of a sudden you just start hearing like moaning and groaning of like halflings and stuff, and they just start dogpiling and trying to eat y'all when they were previously cheerful.
Yeah.
It's like if you're gonna make them goofy, they also have to have the opposite. They also have to be terrifying in a sense.
Right.
But yeah, that's
you do a really good job of making the bad guys cool in your world.
Well, it's because I have to truly believe in them. But I also know, because I know that came a thing with Cormac. Like we had that like kind of errata, almost addendum when we were texting afterwards, being like, oh, we got these rolls wrong. It's like you're like, go ahead and roll damage for him. Like, I've already disassociated. Like I'm past it. Yeah. Well, it's just because that's just what I do as a DM. Like, bad guys, like I do get attached to them, but that's because I want them to be I want them to have emotion behind them too. They can't just be a blank slate where like I'm trying to describe like the opponent of the like the party, but I'm so obviously on the party side that even if they're like big and tough, like there's a comic undertone there shouldn't be. Like I'm already like belittling them. It doesn't give that sense of like there's no sense of fear or apprehension in that. But I also disassociate with them very quickly after you kill them. Yeah. Like by the end of the session, if it was like a middle of the session thing, I've almost forgotten about them in the sense of moving forward. But I know I do it because I know I'll be angry. It's not an anger that surprises me. Mm. It's like a pissiness that I know I'm gonna be, so I know how to not like let it come out.
I see.
Yeah.
So I like to make. Recently, I've made more bad guys that I was more proud of, that I thought were cool. Like the orcs that I had that attacked you guys with that little ambush plan to track. I thought those guys were pretty cool.
Like when you're on their side, but you're not explicitly like pushing the scales down to let them win. Like you get a lot more creative in it, like because you feel like you're playing your side, but you just have to understand. Honestly, except for your big bad guy, I sometimes just don't think my big bad guy will lose. Like I'm just kind of convinced of it. Like especially like if it's a campaign, like style, like big bad guy that's either been there for half the time. It's like you I don't know if it's still a work in progress with this most recent one. I'm gonna see if like how it plays out, like just staying on his side mentally.
Yeah.
But like not playing against the players, but playing against the characters.
It is 100% super difficult to take the side of your own bad guys against the players and the players' characters when you're not holding back. Mm-hmm. So like in the game that we most played that I DM'd for us recently, where I was trying to actually kill you, and it was your character's arc to die.
Yeah.
That was such a hard, like it was such a mental fuck up to be like, you have to kill him. You're gonna have to do it. You gotta believe in the bad guys, and even the dragon.
Well, the thing wasn't good enough for. I don't know if I ever like. If the story was ever just in my head, but I think I meant to maybe tell you, be like, if he doesn't die here, he'll just go die something. Like he'll find death eventually.
We talked about that, but I was like,
I can't remember if like I was like, if I was rectifying the story in my head, be like, I don't think he can kill this monstrosity that I built. like without like going out of your way to introduce
like, I
like
have to do something
specifically
crazy.
anti-Cormic like
That's what I did.
like encounter after encounter after, because you gave me the ability to regenerate. With the artifact weapon, it was.
I gave you the ability to build the character that you wanted to build. Everybody had the same options, sort of.
Like it was one artifact legendary or rare, or one artifact or legendary, then very rare, and then a rare.
One rare, one uncommon.
Yeah,
it was.
But I didn't use it. I used the like the flask of perpetual booze.
Yes.
The cloak of useful items, an arcane cannon, and the hammer of Perforos. I can never say his name, but it was out of the Theros. It was the hammer that gave me a bunch of weird construction abilities. Made me immune to exhaustion. Made me immune to exhaustion as a berserker barbarian at level 20.
It was pretty much unkillable. You had like what, 330 health?
335, and that was just averages. That wasn't actual.
Right, you didn't roll
because of the primal strength put me at 24 constitution. Then I take tough. I always take tough.
You gotta take tough.
I just love it.
If you played KOTOR, you want to take tough. You just want to.
Yeah,
you got to.
I just remember when I first got you into D&D 2. You started texting me. You're like, holy shit! KOTOR runs on a D20. It's like so many of these things make sense.
I was like, oh my god!
I'm like, did you just not even like? I was like,
I didn't know how it worked.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those things like why I for the Strixhaven campaign made y'all like the 4 pages of cheat sheets for rules, because
right.
like it's like. And as like a DM and someone who's like I'm just every day just looking at the rules over
right.
and over, it's like you just take for granted all the little things that you know, and you start assuming other people know them. And we do that in like daily life as humans. We do that.
It's totally true.
It's like I get surprised when someone's like, I don't know how to like change my oil, or like what do I do if I have a flat tire? I'm like, well, there's a gas station right there. Your tire, like, you're not on the rim. Just go fill it up. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh no, like. Things that I just assume other people should know, they don't, and that was one of those things with all those little pages. But then also, another one of those things like, the whole KOTOR thing. You're like, holy shit! It uses a dice system. That's what these numbers mean.
I was like, oh my god!
I had no idea that they were all that there was an actual rolling generator that was using those modifiers.
Yes, I was like, that was such a epiphany for me. I'd been playing at KOTOR for so long. I understood so little, but I could get the perfect build, like, just because I knew the game.
Yeah. It was tough. I already had a constitution of 24 because it was level 20 barbarian. There's a few other things. Yeah, it was berserker barbarian. So that hammer gave me immune to exhaustion, so I could just berserk as much as I wanted. Got random little things. Being a dwarf, resistant poison damage. Got resistance from fire from the hammer as well. Then there's one of those homebrew like racial feats from D&D Beyond that, like it's like bearded defense.
Yes, plus 1 AC.
Yes, it was like plus 1 AC and like resistance to cold damage.
Yes,
that's it. Like
awesome.
It's no like stat increases. It's like one of those. I like having those because. That's a rant.
How are you gonna cut his neck if he's got a huge beard?
Yeah, that's a rant for another time. Is like how they've like homogenized all the races now.
Yeah.
With the most recent thing. Also, it's only because of the goddamn D&D meme subreddit point out the picture I wasn't paying attention to. But have you seen the new picture of the Minotaurs?
No.
They have hair and they don't have fur. Yeah. They don't have fur anywhere. Like the picture in the new Monsters of the Multiverse. The first off, the Minotaur that shows it goes from it goes from the Ravnica, like the Magic the Gathering, Minotaurs who are just animals, like they're just beastly monsters, to what a furless with like a swoopy hair and a ponytail Minotaur that looks just like something a furry would wear instead of like a monster. But that's beyond that. That's just a terrifying, horrifying picture when you start to think about it. The fact that it has hair and it doesn't have fur.
Yeah, that's scary.
This is the like how they've homogenized like all the races, or they've taken what are seen as like the bad sides of races or something like that. And with that, you either have a world where adventuring parties are fucking psychopaths,
Yeah.
and every race is completely free will, and there's not any sort of like inherently bad groups,
Right.
or you have a setting where they're just not well-adjusted people.
Right.
It doesn't mean they're murdering, butchering psychopaths, and there are some inherently bad groups, because otherwise, it is purely point of view
Yeah.
on the probably 500,000 individuals that you kill by level 20 each. Purely point of view on whether they're good or bad.
Yeah.
Unless there's like inherent good and bad in a setting.
Sure.
That's my rant on that.
Sure.
Because that's why they've homogenized so much stuff. They've taken away any of the characteristically like aggressive or negative, like violent tendencies of races. Like the hobgoblins are no longer hobgoblins are fucking happy-go-lucky like communists.
I think you can still
And
have
instead of being the Mongols.
I think you can still have a world where the players and the adventurers are not well-adjusted people, and there are still there's not races that are inherently bad, but rather just groups of people that join together because they are inherently bad, not based on their race. And you may have a multitude of different cultures and races in those groups that are bad, and you can just kind of paint them like this is a bunch of highwaymen, or this is like a group of raiders.
That's why I've seen like a lot of why they needed to have race. Like, and this is one take I like on it is like that race moves on from being like characteristics and just being like aesthetics. Then you have like a culture,
right?
That would have given like culture would have given you like the half orc like racial traits and stuff.
Totally.
Versus like you get those racial traits because you're half orc. I've seen that. I do like that, the culture aspect. But if they're tying features and traits directly into your race, like your choice of race, then you can't also at the same time be like, well, everyone in this race is different. No, motherfucker, you gave them specific traits and features depending on their race. You can't have both.
Right.
You can't have both.
Totally. That's right. Randy Marsh is a half orc. I didn't hear no bell.
Oh, fuck. Does that mean Americans are half orcs?
Americans are half orcs.
Oh no.
Americans are half orcs. You heard it here first.
Oh no.
I didn't hear no bell. I'm sorry. I thought this was America.
What was it? Was it Bat Dad?
Yes.
Was that
Bat
the
Dad.
big bad one at the end? Yeah.
Yes. I want you.
Just the realization.
They cheer them on so they get disqualified. They don't have to go on to the next league.
I just love so much just the transition as like the original audience for South Park got older. The transition from like the kids being the main characters to the parents because they're now ages that you can relate to.
Oh my god, it's
like
funny.
now the kids are they're still the main characters, but never before until like the generation that grew up on South Park got to be parents.
Yeah, until like season 20.
That were like that really like Randy and like all the other parents like started to come out like into their own. Like it was just as you could also just see the view that like like that like Matt and Trey had as they also were growing up. They're like, these points of views are a lot like can also be really funny too.
Oh my god, that's so true. I fucking love that show. I haven't watched any of the new seasons.
It's pre-COVID was probably the last time I really sat down and watched.
What's on here?
We have that. That one actually kind of talked about. Oh well, then we just kind of went over that. Is it good or bad to have setting-based restrictions on races and potentially classes or backgrounds?
Oh, I think it's totally good to have setting-based restrictions if it adds to the world.
Mm-hmm.
If it is like a part of your world that like mer people are inherently bad and like everyone's afraid of the ocean, and like you can't play one because then nobody would join a party with you unless you're all going to be mer people, right? So like you can do something like that, or like whatever you want it to be. It's based up to the DM and the players, and your session 0 it should be.
Yeah, I like that, and especially because kind of the way that the homebrew that setting that I've been running, obviously pirating, scavenging ideas from every piece of media I've ever consumed in my entire life, and just repurposing them. But just kind of the idea that like y'all are kind of stuck like on the material plane right now.
Right.
And just really what y'all don't know is that like a lot of people in the settings, well except Strixhaven is going to blow that open and y'all will learn a lot more about that. with the introduction of like the MTG like planeswalkers as some of y'all's teachers. Just this idea that like, well, yeah, you've always referred to material plane that like means our world, right? It's like, well, there's like a universe that is the material plane. There's a number of worlds and settings and stuff in that, but it is very specifically like where mortals live. Versus when you go outside of that, but with my setting, the old like Pac Primeval with Asmodeus getting his power and like developing the Nine Hells because he's supposed to punish people there. I added onto that, that Primus is also in charge of keeping the balance like in the material plane.
Right.
Because the whole pact also made like the worship and like and following of deities by mortals way more powerful, like in the sense of like how much power they get from it. But it also means you don't, as a deity, you don't fuck with the material plane. It's like if an entire community is using like one lake for water, and everyone lives around the lake, or there's like a dozen different communities all around this one lake. They have one universal rule: you don't piss in that lake. You don't dump anything into that lake because we all draw from that lake.
Mm-hmm.
And so Primus is sets like, yeah, you can give your worshippers powers. You can maybe send some of your underlings like in for a limited time, but no deity can establish a foothold in the material plane, because then that fucks with the free will of the mortals. Mm-hmm. And you have to either be worthy of worship, or you just shouldn't be a god, or have a product that's good enough that people want in.
There you go.
It's like kind of that. It's like it's like good like good aligned and like benevolent like deities are usually passive because people will come to them for their product. Evil deities are way more proactive. Because they're like the door-to-door salesman.
I gotta sell you what I got. Yeah, because nobody wants it.
No, the benevolent is the water company and the electric company. Mm-hmm. They know you're coming to them eventually, or one of them.
Right.
The evil ones are the door-to-door salesmen that will convince you of anything, because they're like, well, I doubt people are just going to start burning each other's villages out of the blue, but if I can give you a good reason to.
There you
go. but they personally cannot step foot in it, except for like some. There are some exceptions, but they have essentially had their deity power, like their powers as a deity stripped from them, and they're more like watching over like important sites. And even if push comes to shove, they're very easily to like beat. But it's more like they're kind of standing as like counselors or kind of stuff like that. And they don't really make apparent who they are. Like y'all interacted with a real who is a god, but she's there because she's protecting something. But she's also nowhere near God status and power because she's there. But and yeah, it's kind of that sense that restriction. Like I know that like with that first campaign, kind of in that setting, how it's going is like this one of the big things is like you just can't be from a different plane, and you don't really know anything about a different plane because the travel is really limited, because if it opens up, then shit starts to happen. Strings like beams start to get crossed, and they've had it happen a few times in the history of that setting, and it's caused gods to be wiped out of existence because they pushed too far, or they didn't react when things were pushed too far. And like Primus also sits as a deity that is also seen by other gods. As that belief gives gods power. That now there's a bunch of gods that are like, oh, he like Primus upholds this balance and this neutrality. It's like. So it's also a god being bolstered by the belief of other gods.
The gods believe
so Primus is terrifying because of that.
Right.
But also Primus is like what drives a man to have a heart full of neutrality. Is that Brannigan? Yeah. Or he's talking about the gray people, the neutral. He's like what kind of thing drives a man to have a heart full of neutrality? What kind of thing drives a man
to have a heart full of neutrality? Zap Brannigan. I freaking love that show. Oh man,
Disenchanted is actually really good too.
Yeah,
but it's hard when you're older. Like when your older sibling is Futurama, and you're only and when Disenchanted, I think it's like only 5 seasons, and it's just hard to stand up to the decades of Futurama.
Oof. What we got next on here?
But yeah, that was actually kind of the closing point on that.
All right.
And other topics we kind of hit as we've gone through.
I think it's a good little first talk. We'll see if people want to ever watch us talk again.
What did you do? Oh hey, Jeb said hey. Hey Jeb.
Why is it Baylor 63?
He stole mine. '63. He wanted to go to Baylor. He didn't.
What is 63?
That was my football number.
Oh God, you're one of those.
Well, I just did my gamer tag of Spalding 63.
Fair
and
enough.
then Spaldingo 63, and then they've done Dingo 63, on Baylor 63, all kinds of stuff like that.
I can't remember what my old high school football number was.
What was that? Was that the Beast? Hi, buddy.
You don't get him on a string?
No, I don't know. He's bad. I don't know. He's lazy right now.
He's good boy.
But yeah, I guess we'll talk with y'all later, and we'll see what happens.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, y'all have a good one.